Welcome back to our last block. It deals with crypto assets and we'll start off with a panel. The panel deals with the question, who purchases crypto assets? And please welcome with me Frank Wagner, René Andres, Alex Höppner, Simon Seiter, and of course our moderator for this panel, Professor Dr. Philipp Sandner.
Yeah, thanks, Marcel.
And Christoph Ivanes. I'm sorry, you are remote.
Exactly, we have a lot of people on this panel because the topic is so dynamic. So thanks very much, Marcel. Today we'll talk about actually who is purchasing crypto assets and Bitcoin. In history, it has primarily been retail investors, and we are waiting for the institutions to come, right? Some of them are onboarding and passing KYC processes, others are yet to join. And therefore, let's explore how is the state of the ecosystem, what are we doing here, and who is purchasing Bitcoin and who is basically joining later. Who wants to start quickly presenting himself, his company, and also a few on this topic? Simon.
Okay. Hi there, Simon. I'm working at Deutsche Börse Group as head of digital assets. Yeah, I think that this is a quite interesting asset class, even though it takes some time to adopt in the institutional space. And the more institutional you become, the more difficult it is to adopt. Yeah, and sadly, this is also true for the group. However, we're working on it. And so I hope that we can see something here in the sooner than later future, also from us. Yeah.
But Deutsche Börse Treasury has not yet purchased Bitcoin, right?
You will have to ask my treasurer.
Probably not. We would have known this. Okay, Frank, please.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Frank. I'm Frank Wagner. I'm co-founder and CEO of Inbao Group. We are a digital asset
Excuse me, your microphone is turned off.
Okay, technical challenges, so I start again. My name is Frank Wagner. I'm co-founder and CEO of Inbao Group. We are a Liechtenstein-based digital asset manager. For me, Bitcoin and Co. are more than just a new asset class. I think it's life-changing, not only for me, but also for retail and professional investors. And it's really my passion to contribute to the space by helping others to get into the asset class.
Excellent, thanks. Then we have Alexander here, back in Germany, now residing in Asia, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, Alex, I'm CEO of BitMax. BitMax is the inventor of the perpetual swap, probably the most traded crypto product globally. Coming from the derivatives world now, most of our clients are actually prop shops and high-frequency traders. So there, the institutional world is already there. Although we all know that mostly now B2B follows B2C, so we're still in a world where mostly the interest is driven by the retail size in correlation with the building out of the regulation. I'm all in for that topic. I think this is quite obvious. And I'm very happy now to be on the derivative side because I expect that this will be the next big thing with all the institutional players coming into the market. And we see very decent volumes in the top 5 exchanges globally on this.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. Then we have Christoph here, sitting in Berlin, with also a company operating in the area of retail and crypto. Christoph, please.
Yeah, so hello everyone in Frankfurt and on the screens. I'm Christoph, CFO at a company which is called Bitwala, which is running a product which is called Nuri since 1.5 weeks. So here you still can see the old Bitwala. But we have rebranded. Yes, we are in the retail space. One of the reasons for our rebrand is that we want to make it broader. We want to bring the mainstream into crypto. We run a product which is a neobank account, so the easiest possible solution. Everybody of us knows online banking, can use online banking. And this is for us the on-ramp to go into investments. We've started with cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Ether. But in the future, we want to expand to other opportunities to invest your money, to grow your money. So our claim is Nuri, the bank account to grow your wealth. Obviously, my take here in this panel is from this retail perspective. But what a lot of people don't know, Bitwala has been a corporate treasury investor in crypto before MicroStrategies and Tesla. And perhaps in relation to our balance sheet, perhaps even more significant than these two. Can talk about that later.
That's good news. I didn't know this actually. Nice to hear this. René, what about you?
Yes, so I'm René. I'm an investor principal of the European Investment Fund. So we pretty much back venture capital funds across Europe, relatively large investor. And since some time, we also back teams that follow crypto strategies, both on the equity side, but also invest in cryptographic assets. So we are pretty much looking at the stuff that's maybe to come in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years in that space. So we are indirectly exposed to a lot of stuff. Also, finally, indirectly invested in Christoph's company. On that side, who is moving into that space? Venture has always been a pretty undemocratic asset class. And when it comes to cryptographic or investments in cryptographic assets via VC managers, it's pretty much institutional investors, but only a very, very tiny group of such. There are a few private investors who do that. Retail investors are only joining relatively late in these venture type of deals via stuff like Polkastarter or CoinList. So it's still relatively institutional focused, but a very small group of people only, not very big.
Excellent. So it's now approximately half a year ago since MicroStrategy has invested in Bitcoin. So we could expect that in case Michael Saylor has inspired other CEOs and treasurers and so on, that right now in summer, June, July, August and so on, in case he has inspired other people, that they then also should take similar decisions. This is yet to come. So far it did not happen, except Tesla. So question to everybody here on the panel, where are the institutionals, where are the corporates? Are they onboarding themselves? Are they yet to come? How long will it take?
Yeah, I think that for corporate treasurers is still a way to go, because they mostly depend on the classical banks. The classical banks are struggling with the topic too, and until the classical commercial banks or the banks that are helping the corporates in structuring their normal business and financial life has this as a fixed building block embedded into their offering, it will take a time. I think that most of the companies who are really into the crypto space, like we do this too, the normal treasury for ourselves, basis trades, is too obvious not to do it. Yeah, you should do it. But for classical corporates where really this whole Bitcoin thing is quite a long way to go, I think it will still take time. But we discussed it, Frank and myself, we discussed it prior to the session, that actually the whole lending ecosystem that's evolving is very interesting for that. So there should be much more push into that. But maybe if push comes to shove, it goes back to like gray-haired old man like I am. So it maybe needs another management or manager round to come up and step up until this really breaks through.
Yeah, first of all, we are not in the country of the risk takers, so we are very, very slow moving, and honestly, that really ashames me sometimes. I'm really grateful for Michael Saylor and the others contributing so much to the ecosystem. Here in Germany, we are in a country of the slow movers, and I would say, not only from my perspective, I'm of course all in as well, and it's my passion. So I really do it because it's my passion. But for a professional managing other people's wealth or managing the wealth of a company, if they miss that opportunity, they are not doing their job. So please take your time, go into the details, and never stop learning and start trying.
Trying, not crying, right? Trying with an T. What would you like to add, Simon?
I knew this question would come, Philip. So I'm not all in at first, a bit to provoke, yeah, but I'm still in. And I think the same holds maybe for the treasury side. Yeah, of course, if you are talking to players from the industry which their main business is basically trading that stuff, of course they have it in the treasury. So still congrats, but I think there's a bit different to talking to Siemens treasury, for example, which I know from previous transactions. Yeah, and I think what shouldn't be underestimated is that simply these processes take some time, and that again, for example, of course I understand that Bitcoin can be seen as a hedge, for example, in terms of inflation, and therefore may make sense. Bitcoin simply as part of the mix in the treasury, but still you shouldn't keep in mind that it has some volatility, for example, still. So if you are managing it from a treasury perspective, I understand that people, which job is basically to provide financing, long planned ahead, that this is quite difficult if it isn't a business hedge for yourself. Yeah, so if your main business is in the crypto space, of course, it makes sense from the treasury side to invest in it. But if your treasury job is to finance a factory that is being built in 5 years, who the fuck knows where the Bitcoin price is in 5 years?
Is crypto the risk or is fiat the risk for them?
And the risk is that you have to pay a company to build a factory in euro. As soon as they accept Bitcoin, we can maybe talk differently. But the contract for the 5-year plan is in euro. So I take the risk as a treasury.
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is the way how the world works today. Sometimes we would like to have more Bitcoin being used, but at this point of time, it's mostly, sometimes it is an echo chamber. We have to admit this, right?
And sorry to add, because this is a very specific and important point. What is the treasury doing as well? It's managing currencies. So, for example, it's managing currencies because you need the currencies in the local space where you're doing business and managing that. And with all respect, still, it's an investment class, but I don't see Siemens going all in on gold. Yeah, that's never being done. They're managing currencies because currency is being used. If Bitcoin is not being used, you can make it as part of a speculative aspect in the treasury department. But from the main treasury perspective, to manage the currencies, to be able to pay at a specific point in time, it's a bit, to be provocative, useless. However, of course, if you want to use it as a hedge against inflation, it makes sense.
Yeah. Let's ask Christoph, because you must also be approached by, I don't know, companies, asset managers, and so on. What do you tell them? Do you tell them, please onboard with your app, or is it not possible because it's just for retail investors?
Exactly. So currently we are really definitely only retail, partly because to onboard institutional clients, as many of you will know, there is a very complex onboarding process because of the KYC and all of the source of fund requirements you need, and how deep you have to dig if you onboard someone who's not just an individual person with an ID card and a quite easy question. So there's an additional level of complexity, but we still have looked into it. To be honest, a little bit before the current hype curve. So around 1.5 years ago, we made some user tests. We made around 50 interviews. And to be honest, at that point of time, the real demand for crypto solutions for different businesses, ranging from e-commerce shops up to consultancies, etc., it was not big enough. And even like from the crypto native businesses, so miners, somebody working in different crypto products, there was very, very few feedback. Yes, we need this, or we don't have a solution yet. So for that, we will not also for the future move our product to, but I want to go back a little bit on the treasury strategy, and Simon obviously is right to say that if your corporate treasury strategy is to provide stable and available funding for projects in fiat currencies in a shorter maturity, yes, you need to be fluent in these fiat currencies. But different companies have different treasury strategies. MicroStrategy, for example, has an excess cash, no necessary investments. So the corporate strategy, the corporate treasury strategy is how to preserve the funds of the company in the best possible way, so to protect it from inflation and to not miss out. So not having opportunity costs of hoarding cash in fiat currencies and not using it in other forms of investments. So they need to invest, and that is why they came up with Bitcoin. And there are obviously other treasuries around in the world, and it's more and more of those who have a lot of cash on the balance sheets. Look at Apple, how many cash they have on the balance sheet, because it's a problem. What is the alternative investment? There's very often an alternative investment missing. The prices in the M&A market are very, very high. Investing in equity, already a huge expanded market. So where can you allocate your cash? And that brings some of these corporate treasurers and CFOs. I'm really speaking out now of this position, not because of gambling, not because you're in the crypto industry, but you need to look into, and we're not talking about the whole portfolio, a part of your treasury, do you want and need to allocate that into an asset class, into an alternative investment as part of your long-term strategy on funds which have a longer maturity and you are not needed in a very fast way?
I think you see here very nicely that at some point of time, the goal for the CFO providing liquidity will conflict with the shareholder value, especially in an inflation regime. And then it gets really interesting. So it really depends on what the top level management decides, what's the goal, and then you go the Simon way or the Christoph way, right? But let's talk about Bitcoin versus Ethereum. We heard some trouble in the markets in the last weeks and months, right? People say that Bitcoin is very energy intensive, right? Others find it extremely efficient, so to say. We know Michael Saylor speaking here. And therefore, what's your opinion here? Especially with the stigma which might come to Bitcoin because of the electricity consumption. Do you think that, for example, Ethereum could potentially catch up? Yeah, not necessarily overtake Bitcoin, but potentially catch up because, in fact, Ethereum has a roadmap to become kind of green. So what's your opinion here, talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, or basically Bitcoin versus Ethereum, basically? Anybody wants to respond first? Maybe René, do you have an opinion here?
Yeah, a light one probably. Yes, of course, there has been a discussion around that, and with Ethereum moving now to proof of stake, and also I would say other solutions in the Ethereum community being built to also to be more efficiency, being it compression approaches, being it virtual machine efficiencies and other stuff. So I think on the Ethereum side, there will be further gains being made, but of course you need to compare when you compare Bitcoin also with other products of how much energy they are consuming, how much fiat currency moving around is consuming in terms of energy. But coming back to of course, linking that now to maybe a price or where's Ethereum going. I think also adding a point here, I think the Ethereum developer community is so largely increasing, and it's the biggest layer 1 protocol that is where a lot of decentralized apps are being built. So I think that's definitely a very interesting market generally to look at from a venture side, and also from a probably ESG side if you want, because a lot of the protocols actually are using probably relatively, well, one of the main goals they are trying to solve is of course efficiency, and that links to energy efficiency as well.
Okay, yeah, Frank, please add something.
Yeah, maybe I can add something. Regarding energy consumption, everything is said. Yeah, I don't want to repeat what everyone can read on the different sources, but my reminder, my heads up is we are talking about ESG. So let's talk not only about the E, ecology, let's talk about the social aspects. So cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, is democratization of money. That's a big game changer, and it's really a good thing. And let's talk about the G, the governance as well. So Bitcoin and others, they stand for transparency, they stand for distributed trust and so on. So Bitcoin and Co. are more than ESG compliant than the average asset manager or wealth manager can imagine. And so I see it 100% positive.
Yeah, I think sometimes I also think, okay, the electricity consumption indeed is pretty bad, but if you then get some tweets where you see people in Nigeria and elsewhere in Venezuela, where for them, Bitcoin is the last resort for getting financial sovereignty, right, in a high inflation regime.
It's the first technology where you can produce the value, generate the value by producing electricity in a different place from the consumption. So when we need electricity here in this room, it should be produced somewhere between here and 500 kilometers. You can do that in a third world country and mine Bitcoin at free cost because it's solar energy. That's the potential of Bitcoin.
No, this is absolutely right. But you know, you have to admit, Bitcoin does use a hell lot of energy. You know, that's you cannot argue this away. You can basically put it in context, but still, you know, it's a fact. But Alexander, what's
Yeah,
your
but in
opinion?
comparison to what? Like we said already, or like Frank said already, I mean, a lot has been said. If Bitcoin is the new gold, what's the energy consumption of gold? And how clean is gold production? I think we can have lengthy discussions about the impacts of gold production globally and poverty and everything that goes along with that. And it's always the case that if there is a new technology coming substituting something else and the substitute is still there, the sum is still negative. Yes, sure, because the one who is getting replaced is still there. So, and we shouldn't too much now hassle around and run behind populist statements. I think there's a lot of proof out there in the market why some things have been said and for what good. And I think we should focus on that. Yes, different attitudes or different protocols in let's say, for the cryptographics can help for the future. And remember that for a lot of production cycles that we have had and technologies in the past, the first iterance is not always the one who remains or which remains and is directly optimal in all aspects. So I wouldn't bother too much, actually.
Okay, but once again, coming back to the original question, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, is there some versus there, or is it basically both potentially being an interesting, going into an interesting future?
I would like to bridge both discussions with an answer. And I'm also, by the way, with Frank, all being said about the E stuff. We could discuss the S stuff, because people that do not have access to Bitcoin, they will suffer more from unstable currencies and stuff like that. But besides that, I think Bitcoin at first is a technology. People tend to forget that, is my impression. Ethereum is as well. And technology is fit for purpose. And then people use it differently and then argue that it doesn't suit some purposes because they take the discussion quite religious. It's quite interesting. If I talk internally, like in general, if I would discuss a business case, I would never discuss with the guys if I use a SQL or non-SQL database. But if it comes about blockchain, everybody gets religious, why so ever, but whatever, And similarly, I think it's with Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's two different technologies. They have two different purposes, You should use Bitcoin for the purpose it's being intended or at least then ultimately built for, and similarly Ethereum. And so I wouldn't put it in a versus context. You simply have to use it in a proper way. And people, to some extent, may not do that yet.
I disagree. Sorry.
You can always disagree.
That's cool, because we're on a panel discussion. Sometimes it's just helpful for entertainment of everyone.
Of course.
I think it's more than technology. Bitcoin and Co are more than technology. It's a game changer. It's as much technology as in internet, let's say the TCP IP protocol. Of course, there's an underlying technology, but it's a game changer for the financial service industry. It's a game changer for the way how people manage money, how they have access to money. So it's by far bigger. And I would say, especially here in Germany, especially on these conferences, we tend to reduce the discussion to technology. It's more. And that's why it's so important to understand for the corporate treasurer, for the wealth managers.
I still disagree.
For the banks,
because
exchanges.
The wheel was very, very innovative. It helped a lot. We can build cars. Wow. There are use cases that work on technology. Still, it's the technology. So of course we have use cases on top, but and it's important to make clear what the use case is. But I think especially for this thing to discuss Bitcoin versus Ethereum, for me it's really like two different technologies with two different purposes.
But
I also want to add, just also to make the panel bring a little bit more fire to this room. I also disagree with Simon. I also think it's not only technology, especially Bitcoin. Additionally, is a movement. It's a community. Ethereum also has a community, because like Bitcoin, let's be honest with each other, it's not the greatest technology ever. It was the first, so it would perhaps be not around anymore and would not be leading in market cap if there would not be a movement and a community over the years built around it, believing in it, spreading it around it. And so it's not technology the winner here in the cryptocurrency space. It's also people's belief in that asset class, in that technology, and then basically networks effects are starting. Then if this movement, if this community is there, they build around it, they build the application, then build the other layers, they build towards the customers and bring more people in, and the network effect gets stronger. So I know what you want to say, but also to make it a little bit more interesting, I say it's definitely more and has a lot of facets and angles to look at.
Yeah, anybody wants to add something on the potential purpose of Bitcoin? I don't know, Alexander?
Okay, I think everything has been said already, but the question is now when I look at it from an asset class standpoint, it has, and there's a lot of discussions going on around the potential of being the next gold. Yeah, and then we would have to, coming back to the energy consumption thing, we need to, let's say, compare it to that asset class too. The question is whether maybe what was Bitcoin in the beginning is now more ETH. Yeah, and ETH develops a little bit from the volatility and from the purpose of the asset class trading wise. That goes a little bit in that direction, and Bitcoin is more the new gold version. But we have to see. Interesting correlations with altcoins, between ETH and altcoins, interesting correlations to the classical market still. It's too young to see really trends. We had the discussion beforehand to really, are there trends already that you can see out of that? So I completely agree to everything that was said. It's a technology for and foremost, but also it's a belief. And as you said, Frank, from the ESG point, it has the S and the G in it. And that thing, what drives everybody in believing it to be a big game changer in the future.
Okay, interesting. So let's. I would like to point towards another topic which we had scheduled, talking a little bit about inflation. Do you think that inflation might and will be some kind of trigger point for crypto assets to increase? Because if you look at the stock to flow value, for example, then at some point of time the stock to flow value of cash will decrease below Bitcoin, right? According to the theory, I know there are pros and cons, but do you believe in these thoughts, or do you think that, well, no, we do not have inflation at all? So how do you project the next couple of months? Who wants to give it a try?
I would to some extent here maybe surprisingly agree. And I think the reason is simply that the value of money is actually, as already correctly stated, a question of belief. And it's very simple, and you can see that in emerging countries where they have really unstable currencies. I mean, we are talking about still a bit of inflation, yes, and it's a valid point, and we have to take care of it. But compared to other countries, as being said, for example, in Africa, that's another game. Yeah, and if people believe more in Bitcoin than in the euro, for example, then not only the central bank but the current money system has an issue. And that's a very valid point, because simply, ultimately, the value of the euro is not determined by a central bank, but by the people. The central bank only is steering the amount that is fluent. Yeah? But it's really about if people believe in it or not. And if there comes a point in time where they believe that the Bitcoin is more stable than the euro on a broad basis, this is not happening yet, but we can see this in our niche market, so to say, then this definitely will be a possible alternative, what you have scheduled here.
Christoph, you want to add something here, or maybe René, any remarks from your side?
Oh, I can take that, René, no problem. The question is the inflation pressure of the quantitative easing already priced in the crypto prices, right? We don't know. Perhaps not at the current price, but perhaps at the price a month ago. I really don't know. But one thing is obvious. Investors are searching for alternative investments massively. House prices, NFTs, old timers, wine. I'm collecting a bit of wine, so wine prices. That is a clear signal that something completely is wrong in the way money is allocated and how pricing and asset price inflation is hitting right now, and it's making some people's life really worse. People searching for a flat, having 2-3 kids, and not earning managing director salaries. So I'm a little bit concerned about this overall for society.
Yeah, Frank, please.
Yeah, it's the question is a little bit provocative. So I don't know how to answer. I have a very, very long version. I skipped that one. But I have a core belief. For me, Bitcoin, especially Bitcoin, but Bitcoin, and I call it Bitcoin and Co., is a hedge against fiat risk, inflation risk first. Second one, it's maybe even kind of a big short versus the financial system. The biggest bet of my life. That's the reason why I'm all in. Yeah, and so yes, I see an inflation risk, not only on the asset markets, as well for the consumer markets, the typical baskets. And last but not least, for me, that's not, we are sitting here in an academic school, and it's easy to discuss these issues. But I have a personal experience as well to share. Part of my family are coming from Argentina. And my I'm divorced, so my ex-mother-in-law, she's 81 or so years old, and she holds Bitcoin. For a very, very simple reason. You will never own Argentine pesos. You will avoid that. They are not allowed to hold dollars anymore, so Bitcoin is the answer. And they have to care. In our parts of the world, everybody thinks, okay, I bring my money to the bank, I get 0.5%, I have a pension fund, I'm safe. No, you are not.
Yeah, I think I want to build on what Frank said. Is it priced in or is it not priced in? I don't think so. Because whenever we celebrate the volumes that the crypto markets are doing, this is nothing. This is not mass market. This is not by far what we can see. And when real inflation hits us and when the real risk comes for the classical, let's say, existing system, then you will see a tremendous inflow and push into that. And that will drive totally different prices.
Yeah, I would agree because the ECB is minting tokens every day.
There was a funny post, I don't know, recommended this. It was like all kind of shit coins are going around. It's centrally issued. It's being issued all the time, continuously. There's no stop. Oh, it's the euro. Yeah.
Well, at this point of time, it's all okay, right? At this point of time, the system works, but the question is, how will this proceed in the next couple of months? Okay, last question maybe to René. Do you see a lot of venture capital funds, lots of startups and so on popping up in this field, which would then also drive innovation in this field, adoption in this field, diffusion and so on?
Yeah, very much. And I think that's where I'm mostly excited about. Yes, I'm excited about the Bitcoin community and the whole decentralized community. But I think where stuff is happening that's to come in the next 5 to 10 years is definitely in the early stage stuff. And we see actually very interesting new type of business models emerging that are not just copying existing, say, financial transaction intermediaries and putting it on the blockchain, so to speak. You see that with Draper Labs or Soraya building completely new media companies from scratch, based on, in this case, on NFT logic, you could say, or on that technology. So there is movement in that space. It's still very fragmented. Not a lot of people wanting to try to go in that field. It's extremely promising. And you see a lot of stuff that's pretty much built on top of that. And that's where you will see the most of the growth happening. Yes, Bitcoin might, let's say from a pure price perspective, 10x, 100x, whatever, but that you can also have in the venture space with a lot of early stage stuff happening. And I guess Christoph is an example of that. But there are other stuff happening, but it's still very small world, very disconnected world, because crypto native is different people, different mindset, different philosophy. And there's only a few venture capitalists who really go into cryptographic assets. And there's also a lot of regulation that still needed to be built and to be clarified to make things easier that way. But it's definitely where I'm pretty bullish about and see a lot of interesting stuff above just, let's say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, but actually what is built, things that's actually happening, new business models, and people actually making use of the technology.
Excellent. I think this was a very, very good closing word. I think we are all quite bullish on everything related to blockchain, some of that at least. And therefore, thanks to everybody here. Thanks for coming and thanks for being there in Berlin and probably in Brussels, if I get this right, René. And talk to you soon.
Trier.
And thanks for the nice panel.